Okay, we're holding Hilchos Taaruvot, Siman Kuf, very important Siman. Even though the title of the Siman is Din Safek Treifas She'ir of Basar, all kinds of sfekas the tarfos that may have occurred in a particular piece of meat. In the very, very beginning of the Siman, it does not deal with sfekas at all. So the sfekas that we're going to be covering later on, an extensive array of possibilities. Here, the Mechaber discusses a famous machlokes of davar shebeminyan that you may have heard about a little bit as we went through the earlier portions of Hilchos Taaruvot. Davar shebeminyan means something that is counted. We do know by now that there are certain items, certain isurim, that are not botel afilu be'elef. We've encountered them. Even though we understand that the regular bittul is roiv and shishim, there are a few exceptions. And those exceptions have to do with something that has a chashivas to it, obviously. It has some importance. That is why, it's important. No, it's not batul, just like something that is ordinary. It's not ordinary. And what makes it not ordinary? Either it's a royalist kabed, it's a real big piece that is served, significant, it's a royal piece, or it's a birya. We spoke a little bit about birya, that is considered a whole creature in itself. And these two, of course, halachas, these two concepts are not that rigid. There's some flexibility. It's shattered, right? It may lose the status of royalist kabed, it may lose the status of birya. In the same way that birya and royalist kabed, or davar sheyesh lo matirin, are not bottle, afilu be'elef, here we're being introduced to a davar shebeminyan, something that is counted, something that is not sold as a bunch. You go now to a store of fruits and vegetables, or to a grocery store, and there are many items that are being sold by the pound, or they're bundled together. They're not so important that every single one a separate unit. You go today to Ralph's, for example, and instead of seeing so much per pound on a certain fruit or vegetable, occasionally you will see $4.59 a piece for those exotic fruits, or whatever.
Oh, it's interesting. By Trader Joe's, they have any type of fruit.
Is that right? Yeah.
Per unit.
Per unit, yeah. So there's some significance. If something is sold per unit, or per piece, I should say, it has more chashivas. Obviously, that is why people are selling it that way, as opposed to selling it by weight or some other form of measure.
There's some halachas that doesn't, if they're sold in innocent.
Exactly. Some things are sold by the dozen. So by the dozen is not considered a davar shebeminyan. No. It's by the dozens. It's not individual. So perhaps before we get into the words of the Mechaber, a little bit of background, a little bit of an introduction of where this halacha comes from that the Mechaber is going to speak about now. He's going to mention this sugya. In other words, this discussion of certain items, and he specifies what those items are that are exceptional in their chashivas. And it's important to keep in mind that when we say chashivas, we're saying a chashivas that the chachamim attribute to it. Not necessarily always what people attribute to. Because if you depend on people, sometimes it could be relative that one place does attribute to it more or less significance than other places. And we will see this also makes a difference in time, in generation, and in place. So there's quite a bit of a difference between something that the Chachamim said are always, and keep this in mind, this is a key point, that the Chachamim always considered important, versus things that people may from time to time consider important. Yeah, well, we talked about things that people consider versus something that is established.
Right.
Yeah, obviously this does come up in Halacha, that there's some subjectivity, right, in the way people consider certain things. So the makor, the source of the halacha, the first few halachas in Siman Kuf Yud, are taken from a Mishnah in Orla. As you know, Orla is something that is asur for us to benefit from, to use, the fruit of the first 3 years. And the problem is that even if Orla gets mixed in with other permissible food items, that it could still be a problem. It's just like any other Isser that is Betarovas. But the shear of Orla is Echad B'Masayim, 200 to 1. Not 60, not Roiv, and so forth. There's an extra Chumrah by Orla. Not that it's going to be Asur B'Mashu, which is a separate category in itself. It also has a shear. Now, that's what the Chachamim tell us. The Chachamim are the ones that give us the shear of Echad B'Masayim. But if you learn the Mishnayos in Perek Gimel, you will find that Rabbi Meir says you have to destroy everything. If Beged shetzava beklipe orla yidolek nisor b'chem kulam yidoleku, you got to burn the beged, the garment that has that was dyed with the klipos of orla. It got mixed in with other garments. You got to burn all of them. You see various situations where you have to destroy the mixture. You can't benefit from it. Another situation where a mayor says that you have to destroy everything is chavile tilton. Also, bundles of tilton of kili akerm that got mixed in with others. In other words, regardless of what the orla is, if it got mixed in with others, you have to burn them. So the next Mishnah gets into a little bit more detail. What's the difference between Reb Meir and the Chachamim here? Shahoyer Reb Meir oimer shedarko limonois, that which customarily is counted, mekadesh. Mekadesh, even though the root of the word mekadesh is to make holy, in the context of Orah, when you see the word mekadesh, it means it makes the whole mixture prohibited. It's asur. Mekadesh here means asur. Just like Kiddushin makes the wife, or the woman being married to one, asur and others, you can say that this word is being borrowed in a sense and applied to those things that become asur as a result of close proximity, like kilayim, right? Or orla, in being mixed up.
Now orla,
or the first 3 years, right? Okay. So he says, so Meir holds that which is counted, shedar kol imonos mekadesh. Chachomim oimrim, ein no mekadesh. The only ones that will cause a problem because of chashivas, because of the importance, eloshisha dvarim bilvad. Only 6 items. Only 6. Rabbi Kiva oimer shiva. Rabbi Kiva says, I agree with those 6, but I want to add a 7th. What are those 6? Ve'eloheim egoze perech. Walnuts that are either from a location called perech, that's what the word perech means, or it could be a very soft kind of egozim. And that is why it's called perech. Some say it means that it comes from perech, some say it's a soft, it's a very, 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 I guess, expensive. Egoz. Egozim no, shkedim are almonds. Rimone badan, pomegranates coming from Badan. This is the name of a location. Chaviyot stumot, right? You have barrels that are sealed. Barrels, of course, full of wine or drink. V'chulfot radin, they are the leaves or the stalks of the tradin. The tradin is a certain kind of beet. Kulsei kruv, the stalks or the parts that grow out of the cabbage. Apparently people valued these. They were used in their cooking, and they were very, very good. Udla'at Yavanit, in the Greek, gourd. You know what the gourd is? Right?
it looks like
The la'at.
yeah, pumpkin.
Like a pumpkin, yeah. Rabbi Kiva omer af kikarot shel balabait, even the loaves of a balabait, which are quite large. We're not talking about the loaves of bread of a regular baker that can be smaller, but very large loaves that they used to make. So either you hold that they're bottled be'echad masayim, like the Chachamim say, except for these things, or you hold that they're not bottled at all. You know, like Rameir says. That's what the source of this particular halacha is. So what do we have so far? We have that certain items have a chashivas because they are counted. The problem is that we don't understand clearly from Rabbi Meir when he says that they are counted. Does he mean that they are always counted? What about certain things that sometimes are counted and sometimes they're not counted? That's a machlokes in the Gemara between Rabbi Elyahu Kin and Rish Lakish. Because all the Rameir tells us over here in the Mishnah Zayin, in Orla, all that he says is es shedar kol imonos. That which is usually counted. Now, does he really mean literally usually, but not always? That's the word here that is causing some problems and brings us to a machlokes in the Gemara. So Rabbi Elyahu Kin holds as shedar kol imonos means what? Things that are very special, that are only sold b'minyan. Dar kol imonos. It is normally counted. Things that are normally counted. And Rish Lakish says, Kol Shedarko means things that people are makpid sometimes to sell b'minyan, but because of their chashivas, but there are some who sell it as a bunch, not necessarily b'minyan, because it says a Shedarko, sometimes yes, sometimes not necessarily always. And that's the source of a big machlokes over here. Is it Rabbi Elyahu Kin or Rish Lakish? They're both interpreting Reb Meir's words, and that can make a difference. Are we saying something that is always sold b'minyan? That is called a davar sheb'minyan. It has chashivas. Or is it sometimes it is sold, but sometimes it's not sold b'minyan? It can also be called a davar sheb'minyan. It doesn't always have to be sold b'minyan. But according to the Chachamim, we're only limited to these 6, and Rabbi Akiva to these 7, and nothing else. Or at least it appears that there's nothing else, because they only mention 6. Now, what's interesting about this, this opens up a big Pandora box, as you will see. Everybody takes different sides. The Mechaber, the Ramah, the Shach, and the Taz. This is one of those halachas that you'll be surprised. Everybody holds like the different shitas. It's not like everybody was able to hold on to one shita. And we will see that it is possible to narrow down the differences. It depends how we understand the Mishnah. Did the Chachamim only mean these 6? Let's think for a moment. Can there ever be any more? Is it possible that these 6 were important back then, and that is why they mentioned these 6? But they're not necessarily opposed to what Rav Meir says. That there may be things that are also very, very important that are darkon limonos, especially according to Rabbi Elyahu Kin, that are always darkon limonos at a certain time in a certain place. Because if that's true, that there may be other things as well, then there's not a real machlokes here between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. Except that what the Chachamim are telling us in the Mishnah is that, today, these 6 are the only ones that we consider davar sheb'minyan. But this does not come to exclude if you can convince me that at a certain place in a certain time, there is something else that is just as important and is also davar sheb'minyan. You follow it? This is a very small difference, a very important little detail that makes a world of a difference. Because once we say that the Chachamim may agree to Rabbi Meir, then there's not a real big machlokes here to begin with. And then I think this will help us understand, the rest of the halacha. How does everybody paskin here? So let's see. The Mechaber, I'm going to read the Mechaber, Sif Aleph. Davar chashuv, oiser b'minoi, b'kol shehu. In other words, it's not bottle at all. Just like roilis kabe, just like birya. If it's a davar chashuv, and he doesn't even call it a davar shebeminyan. Okay, so listen carefully. He doesn't, but that's what he means. Davar chashuv oiser b'mino b'kol shehu v'heim shiva dvorim. So he's passing like Rabbi Akiva, not like the Chachamim. Rabbi Akiva added that 7th one. Ve'elohem, and he quotes the Mishnah, quotes the Rambam basically. It goes to Perech, rimone badan, chaviyot stumot, chelfot taradin, kilchei kruv, dlat yevanit, exact same items that we just mentioned. All kinds of important things that were sold b'minyan. Right. Kikora shel balabais, but now he brings in something else that the Gemara also discusses later on. It's Gemara in Zvachim, I believe. V'chein balei chaim chashuvim heim. By the way, he says balei chaim, they are important. Animals, live animals. they get mixed, and one of them is Asr for some reason. So Baalei Chaim Chashuvim Heim Veinam B'Teilem, they will not just be Batal B'Roiv. One that is Asr got mixed in with others that are not Asr. Which one is it? Aval Shar Dvorim, look at what he says, but any other thing, Afal Pishidarkon Limanois, even though they may be counted, Hara Elu Oilim Kishiuram, they will be Batal Kishir, whatever the Shir is, Batal B'Roiv, Batal B'Shir, depending on what's involved. So he says he seems to be following here the Chachamim, basically following Rabbi Akiva, and not what the majority of Poskim hold. The majority of Poskim hold, no. We pass it like Rav Meir. When Rav Meir is arguing in the Chachamim, we pass it like Rav Meir in those Mishnayos. And therefore, they don't hold, like the Mechaber and the Ramah. As we will see, the Ramah also goes along with this sometimes. In other words, in some things. So, what's going on over here? In other words, the Mechaber seems to be holding like the Chachamim, and basically he's quoting the Rambam, and everybody else makes a big issue of this. That no, this is not so. We don't follow the Chachamim. We don't follow Rabbi Akiva. We follow Rav Meir. And when we follow Rav Meir, do we follow Rav Meir according to Rabbi Yochanan or according to Rish Lakish? Remember, those two also have a machlokes on how to interpret Rav Meir. Did Rav Meir say all things that are always sold b'minyan, or as Rish Lakish says, no, he didn't mean that they are always sold b'minyan, even though they're sometimes sold. Some people do, not all people do. Rish Lakish is more flexible in the words of Rav Meir. So in the words of Rav Meir, which is stricter than the Chachamim, right? That he says anything that is sold b'minyan, anything that usually they count is also is because of the chashivas. Does he mean it is always sold like that, like Rabbi Yochanan explains, or is it like Rish Lakish says in the words of Rav Meir that even though it is not always sold, it's still davar shebeminyan? So who's stricter between Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan? Rish Lakish. Because Rish Lakish says it doesn't always have to be sold b'minyan to be a davar shebeminyan. Even if it's sometimes sold like a davar shebeminyan, means people are machshavet, guess what? All that we've learned till now about bitul b'roiv b'shishin does not apply to it. It's one of those that is also afilu b'm, mashahu. I mean, it's, in other words, it's not batal.
In any proportion.
Any proportions.
It prohibits them proportions.
Right.
The Mechaber seems to imply
Right.
it's partial to
Right.
that it would begin. But then why doesn't the Chachamim mention?
Yeah, Baalei Chaim, there's no machlokes in Baalei Chaim.
No, but I mean,
Baalei Chaim is really a separate halacha within Sif Aleph. That's why he says v'chein Baalei Chaim chashuvim him, and it has nothing to do with Romein the Chachamim.
But the time would be buried.
Oh,
not necessarily.
but remember what the conditions of birya are?
It's whole.
No, but birya has to be asr from the very, very beginning.
No.
Yeah, there are situations where you have a balchai that is not necessarily asr from the very
It's a
beginning.
kosher animal to trade.
Right, well, whatever, something, whatever, yeah. But it's alive, it's a balchai now.
Yeah.
At this moment, it's a balchai. Yeah, it's a balchai. And we'll talk a little bit about this, what is it, today's Thursday, next week, when we speak about that in Sif Beis. What are the circumstances of the balchai being mixed?
Apropos, we said
Thursday, actually.
Thursday.
Because next Tuesday, Tisha B'Av. Yeah. Unless Mashiach comes, and then, of course.
But then it will be allowed.
Then yes. So this is a separate halacha of balchai.
Do we have to start over?
Yeah. So according to the halacha, the Rambam paskin like Rabbi Akiva. That's the way the Shulchan Aruch paskins. But the majority of the poskim, as I mentioned, paskin like Rabbi Meir, that davar shebeminyan is not batal. But what do we do about the machlokes Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan? On that too, there's a machlokes. In other words, okay, we pass according to the majority of poskim who paskin like Rabbi Meir that anything that is beminyan is not batal. Is it if it's something is counted always, or is it if something is counted some of the time? So the smag, and I think Rabbeinu Yerucham as well, they paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. It has to be something strictly always counted, always, all the time. If it's sometimes, it's not called a davar shebeminyan. And the Rashal, the Sefer Sharidura, and the Isa Beheter, they pass like Rish Lakish. In other words, they're more machmer. That even if it's something that is sometimes counted, it doesn't have to always be counted all the time by everyone, it still will be considered a davar shebeminyan.
All the time in all locations.
Exactly. Something that is across the board, something that everybody's machshav. That's the way we understand Rabbi Elyahu.
How
Now,
would we know?
what?
How would we know what?
Well, customarily, darkoi, that's what he says, darkoi, limonos, was customarily, that's what we see people doing. Then it could, whenever you have a minority, this halacha is also brought down from time to time. You will see that there's something called dato bottle. In halacha, you will see this concept of dato. You have one guy who doesn't like a particular fruit or doesn't like a particular, item. And, we have to determine here a halacha,
Even
right?
inside the individual.
Right.
If it's all places, how
Yeah.
do we know for? They
No,
always
so-
considered in China.
So we will see what the Mechaber speaks a little bit about it next, about things that are somewhat different in different locations. But right now we're talking about generally what is accepted. But there may be exceptions. Now, if it's a minority exception, the minority never counts anyway, right? There's something called daton betela tzelacherin. Now, what does the Ramah say? V'yesh oimrim, so he brings down the other shitas. The kol dover shebeminyan. So now he uses the term dover shebeminyan as opposed to the Mechaber using dover choshuv. So he uses the term as it is used in the Mishnah. The kol dover shebeminyan, the haino shedar kolim noisoi, that you ordinarily counted, tomid. Shedar kolim noisoi tomid, always, like Rabbi Yochanan, eino bottle. V'chein no hagin. That is our custom. So he is saying basically that he follows the words of, was a shita, the opinion of Rabbi Meir, but according to Rabbi Yochanan. Right? Because he says Tomid, always. Shach and Taz? No. Shach and Taz hold like Rish Lakish. If you look at the Shach and Taz, you will see that they are very adamant that it doesn't have to be Tomid, like the Ramah says. Definitely, they say, don't follow what the Mechaber says. What's interesting, the difference between the Taz and the Shach here is that the Taz says, you know what? If you have a Hefse Meruba situation, you can be Sevach, on Rabbi Yochanan. Yeah. But not like the Shulchan Aruch. In other words, the Taz says, Hefse Meruba, you can be Sevach on Rabbi Yochanan's Shita, that if it's something that is really not always considered a Dover Shebeminyan, it's not always even though somebody says, okay, then it's Batel. But not like the Mechaber who says only these 6 or these 7. The Shach doesn't seem to make a chiluk between a Hefse Meruba or not. But we have the Ramah. The Ramah goes of course according to Rameh, but it goes according to Rabbi Yochanan. Now, the Mechaber adds that kol dover shu choshuv etzel bnei mokom mihamekoimos, that it's very choshuv among certain people. It goes there. In those days, just like those things in those days, so he says, wait a minute, remember what I just told you about Dover Choshuv? Anything that is like that, Dover Choshuv, of back then, the time of the Chachamim, will have the same din as those 7 items. V'lo huskuru elo, these are not mentioned, elo lefi shehin oisim bechol shehen, bechol mokom, in all locations. In other words, the reason these are mentioned is because nobody can come and say, for us, this cabbage, this beets, or these walnuts are no big deal. Therefore, that is why those are mentioned. So the Chachamim were saying those because they are important regardless of what people have to say. But the Mechaber adds, however, if people in a certain location, like you were asking, in China, whatever, were to consider something very important in their place, in their time, then they would not be bottle. They would be aser bekol shehu.
In that place, in that time, it would not be bottle.
Yeah.
But for us, it would be bottle. The Chinese consider a certain thing, in their place, in their time, it would not be bottle, but in our place.
Right, exactly. The reason these 7 are mentioned is because they apply in all places, in all times. Interesting. In all other locations, the same is true as far as any item, any location, at any time. So this is what I began to say a little bit before, that this makes a big difference over here, that he adds these words, because this may help explain a stira, what appears to be the stira in the Mechaber. They like to pick on the mechaber. They like to find some steers. Sometimes they're very tough to figure out. Why the mechaber say? We had it several times. Why does the mechaber say one din here and one din here? And the one example that they are picking on him over here is that the mechaber in Pei Vov, discussing the halachas of eggs, beitzim, does say something very, very difficult to understand. What do we just say now from Siman Kufyu? That the Mechaber holds like the Chachamim when it comes to Davar Shebeminyan. These six, not just any Davar Shebeminyan. Well, what does this halacha mean? In Pei Vav, he says, Beitzas nevelo treifa, right? The egg over the nevelo or treifa, filo nigmero, it's complete. Shekayotze banim kes bashuk, it's sold in the marketplace. Asura. It's also, right? We know that. It's a basis of velo treifa. V'afilu nis'ara be'elef, mixed amongst 1,000, kulon asura is, wow. Why? Bata b'roiv. Well, what's the big deal about an egg? Davar shebeminyan? Like someone to say? That's fine, according to those who hold the davar shebeminyan is not bottle, but the mechaber is not one of those that holds that a davar shebeminyan is not bottle, because he only holds that those 7 items, like Rabbi Akiva, like the Chachamim, are not bottle because it's the davar shebeminyan at all times. But he doesn't subscribe to the halacha that any davar shebeminyan like Rabbi Elyahu Kin and Orish Lakish. So why would he say that an egg will not be bottle even be'elef? Because it's a birya, perhaps? Birya by egg is only with the froch. Remember, we spoke a little bit about the froch growing out. And there you can have issues of birya. But regular eggs, a regular egg is not a birya. There is, however, one sheet that holds that a regular egg is like a birya. And that is one of the explanations given. I think the Shulchan says that over here, in trying to figure out the mechaber. Maybe he's holding that this is like a birya, like that shita. Right? And that's why over here, he says it's asar. But it's a little bit difficult to say that is it because of that? Or it could be that by eggs there was a chumrah because it has become a davar shebeminyan. It has become, like the Mechaber himself says, if anything does ever become a davar chashuv, over here, in some place at some time, then you would have the exact same thing, same din. If that's the case, but wait a minute, he holds like the Chachamim. Doesn't he hold like the Chachamim? Yeah, he definitely holds like the Chachamim, but he also says that anything that does ever become, right, in some place, in some time, a davar chashuv, it would have the exact same thing. So what he's saying is that what we said in the very beginning, that it's very possible that even the Chachamim themselves did not disagree with Rav Meir. And they held also, davar shebeminyan is a davar chashuv. But in our time, these are the 6 that we're willing to say are davar shebeminyan. It does not come to exclude things that somebody will prove at some point, in some time, in some place, that is a davar shebeminyan. So it could be. The Mechaber obviously, cannot just contradict himself. Of course he doesn't hold of davar shebeminyan in general terms. Yeah, he doesn't, necessarily here explain what the reason for it is. He just says it's asur. Well, that's what brings out the machlokes, stirs out the machlokes, or the tzorich iyun in the mechaber. Why here he says it's not bottle be'elef, and later on he doesn't seem to include eggs as being part of the problem of davar shebeminyan. But he did explain a little bit that it could be that there are items in the future at times and places that will have chashivas. And by eggs, they were machmir for whatever reason, either that it resembles a birya, as some shittas hold, it's like a birya, or because it is something that is always being counted like Rabbi Elyahu Kin, always, forever. But you said before that eggs today are a few dollars a dozen. They're sold as a dozen. And I would agree with you that eggs are not really davar shebeminyan, or are they? If they're sold by a dozen, then it's not considered davar shebeminyan. It's not. A davar shebeminyan, it has to be something that is unique, something that is sold individually.
Are negative?
What is that?
I used to ask how they're sold to Tamar.
Yeah, it could be. It all depends.
Just
Yeah.
5 eggs.
Right.
Okay, you're buying 5 eggs, now
Yeah.
half a dozen.
Yeah.
You're buying 5 eggs. So
Yeah.
I just like to do
Right.
5 eggs is bad.
Right.
The question is, when you say when your eggs are sold by a dozen, is that just a matter of convenience? You're selling 12 individual eggs as a dozen,
right.
Or is dozen the unit by which eggs, which is like it's a bundle.
Yeah.
When you sell whatever, it's some.
Which obviously is not as important.
A sack of potatoes.
Eggs are pretty cheap these days too. I mean,
I've got ones for 170.
not per egg.
No, for per dozen.
Per dozen, yeah. The jumbo ones, you mean? No? Oh, the double, whatever. Anyway, the Ikar Adin over here, the Davar Choshuv is not bottle, is Midrabanan, by the way. Even though I saw somebody mention that the Gra would hold that it's a derisa, but I don't know, I didn't see it yet. But the concept basically, I think everybody agrees that the Davar Choshuv is not bottle, is Midrabanan. The Rambam explains it, the Ramah says it, the Yisha Beheter. Therefore, what's the nafkamina if it's a derabanan? If there's ever a suffix, right, in davar shebeminyan, in a mixture, in a taruvas, you could be makel in the suffix, the suffix derabanan. Oh, what would the suffix be? That's a great question. Yes. There are several kinds of sfeikas, and that's where it becomes interesting. If something in itself is a davar chashuv or not, is that a suffix? Does that count as a suffix? Because if we think a little bit about it, it brings to memory something that we've discussed in the past in Taaruvot about suffix machmas chisoron Yore. We don't have knowledge. That's not a suffix. Just because we don't have the knowledge of it does not.
Ask.
Yeah, ask. Find out. So maybe this would be a suffix machmas chisoron Yore. We don't know if it's a davar choshev or not. So the answer is, I saw somebody give this nice explanation. It says, you know why this is not a suffix machmas chisoron Yore? Because the whole Isser here is a Yediyah. The whole Isser here depends on the judgment of people.
Right, exactly.
And people may have different opinions. Mm-hmm. So how are you going to ever determine? If the Chinese say, oh, take as many as you want, these are cheap. And others will say, oh, this is expensive. In other words, there may be some things that are subject to the opinion of people, so that's not really a Chisor Yediyah that an expert will tell you for sure. This is it. That's why it is a suffix. So if something is a davar choshu or not, it's considered a suffix. That is one kind of suffix. Another kind of suffix, by the way, we've covered this before, if you have a taruvas, and the only suffix here is if it's asur or not, that's not a suffix. That's not a suffix d'Rabbanan. That would not help you. In other words, if there's a suffix here, if this is asur or not. No. If there is a suffix megabe, if this piece is asur or not.
So we're talking about an Isser D'Oraisa, we have a suffix.
Exactly. Whether it's an Isser or not.
Yeah.
That would not count as a suffix over here. That's to say suffix d'Rabbanan l'kulo here.
Why would it be a suffix?
No, because we're talking about it here, davar shebeminyan. It's a davar shebeminyan. Or is it not a davar shebeminyan? It's a suffix. If it's a davar chashuv or not.
I see what you're saying.
Okay?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
If the suffix is whether it's a davar shebeminyan or not, then it's a Rabbanan. But if the suffix is whether this davar shebeminyan is an Isser or not, it's an Isser D'Oraisa.
Right, that's an Isser, yeah. So that doesn't count as a suffix d'Oraisa.
Even though determining that it's an Isser D'Oraisa would now impact it in as much as now it becomes an
exactly. Sure, exactly. So we're not makel on that. Now, if you have a suffix, whether it fell in or not, I don't know if it fell in or not. You could be makel.
Even though it's an Isser D'Oraisa? You
don't know if it fell in to begin with. You don't even know. You don't even know if it fell in. So there's no real suffix yet, on the taruvos, a suffix d'oraisa. It's not. You don't even know if it fell in.
The suffix is whether it's present.
Yeah, to begin with. Now, by the way, what if somebody tells you, you know what? I saw the cook pour some rat poison into, but I'm not sure. What would you do?
Have the cook taste it.
Rabbis tell us, remember, chamira sakanto mi isura. An isur is more chomer than a sakana is more chomer than an isur. If something is also because of a sakana, it's obviously we're stricter with it. You don't want to take a chance. It's a suffix. I'm going to be mako. I'm going to have it. No, it's chamira sakanto mi isura. Whenever sakana is a possibility, you don't take chances. Right? With isura, it could be mako. It's bottle. Bottle b'shishim, but right, whatever. B'chamira sakanto misur. If something involves danger, that this may have salmonella, I don't think you should have it. Don't take a chance. Why?
Now, is it the halacha that you shouldn't have?
That's the halacha.
So
Sure.
it's not medical.
No, that's the halacha, that it's chamira, sakanto misura, that it's bottle. Well, obviously, it can be bottle if it's a small, minute amount in many, many, many gallons.
Depending on what kind of poison.
It can depend on the type of poison, but yeah. Right.
She put rat poison.
She actually did?
And
Oh my.
when I
Became sick or died? Really?
yeah,
And what was she trying to accomplish?
a lot of
Wow, that's an incredible incident. That it actually, I mean, I guess people do all kinds of things. Yeah. Yeah.
that you can have somebody who's allergic to something.
Right.
Fit this right.
Sure.
Is it the person who taaruvos
As far as what?
that would make this hush, whatever they're allergic to? Let's say the cook is allergic to.
Yeah, but what's the question here?
Right, it's
The
a
cook.
kanta or
It's a sakana.
It's a sakana, right?
Right. If it's a sakana, but it's only a sakana
Why?
because
Because
he's allergic.
Only he's allergic. Okay.
He's allergic.
Right.
The person he's serving is not going to go.
Sure. No, but that would not be. It depends. The problem of chamir sakana mizura is only if it is a true potential sakana to the individual who's asking,
he's consuming it.
who's consuming it. Now he's allergic.
No.
The consumer is allergic.
Right. It has nothing to do with.
So he has doubts if this has peanuts in it or not.
Right.
Right? Don't eat it.
So there's nothing-
Don't eat it. You have doubts about it, don't eat it. If you don't have any doubts, go eat it. But once you have doubts and you have reason to doubt, obviously there's reason to doubt, then don't eat it. Don't take a chance. Unless you have your syringe or whatever you have ready. Yeah. Anyway, another possibility of a suffix is if you have a taruvas.
Now, a quick question.
Yeah.
Now, with respect to this kind of situation,
Right.
that has nothing to do with what we're learning here, right? The concept.
No, nothing to do with it.
It's
It's a separate area of halacha. Separate area of
It's
halacha.
not even a question of diet.
Separate area of halacha. That maybe one day we'll cover it in the Chelek Beis of Yore Deah, of things that are also mipnei sakana. You know, all kinds of food items or combinations or circumstances that the Chacham said stay away from this because of different kinds of sakanas. Then another kind of suffix that will be accepted as a suffix is if you have a mixture of a davar chashuv and a davar she'eino chashuv, but you don't know which one is the one that's asur. It could be that the davar she'eino chashuv is the one that's asur. Okay, that according to some that would also qualify as a suffix.
The Rabbanan.
Yeah, that we can be made. All right, just to finish up for today, I saw the Pri Megadim brings down that even in an Isur D'Rabbanan, I think he brings down b'shem the Isur Beheter, that even in an Isur D'Rabbanan we would say Davar Shebeminyan too. In other words, Davar Shebeminyan, which we are saying now is a Davar Chashuv, which is not bottle, would also apply if the Isur is a D'Rabbanan. It doesn't have to be only an Isur D'Oraisa. And even though the Mechaber, by the way, said Davar Chashuv Oishe B'minoy, the Mefarshim here explained that it's lav dafka b'minoy. It's just b'she'eino minoy you would identify it usually, but obviously if it's a situation where you cannot identify even b'eino minoy, it's a machlokes. Some say not lav dafka, but that's what is understood, I think, by the majority of poskim, that when he says b'minoy, it's lav dafka b'minoy. Now Yad Yehuda, which is another one of the Mefarshim here, says that when we say davar shebeminyan, we mean specifically that which is counted, not that which is weighed or measured. It has to be counted, because even though you may say, well, it's measured, it's weighed. Yeah, that's normal, the normal way of doing business. That's not what we meant. When we said davar shebeminyan, we mean strictly davar shebeminyan. So anyway, it is mashma from the Mechaber, as we said before, that a lot of these halachas will depend on the place and the time. The Shach and Taz also speak about that even though we have a list, that list was applicable back then. Today we may have other things considered davar chashuv as well. Based on that, we can understand that there's not that much of a machlokes between the Tanoim or the Amoraim in this case. It could be they actually all agree that if something does have chashivas in a certain place and a certain time, that it would also have the same din, the same halacha. And that would explain the mechaber in saying that an egg is not bottle. We will see, however, with as far as Balei Chaim are concerned, we will see that they may not be bottle, but if something happens to them, just like with Birya and with Roilus Kavit, they can become bottle. The question is, what about a chicken that we will see the halacha later on that is bottle? A chicken that can be bottle, even though it's a chicken, it's because it still has its hair and or its feathers, I should say. When something still has its wool, its hair, its feathers, then it doesn't have the same chashivas. We will talk when we talk about Balei Chaim later on. We will see that this halacha of Balei Chaim, which has chashivas, also is under certain conditions. It retains the chashivas, but if they were shechted, right? No, it all depends on how it is.
How much it stains, how much processing.
Because in the end, even though, for example, Bal Chai may lose its status as a Bal Chai, for whatever reasons, we will see, it could still revert to being a royal iskabed. But as I said, with the detail of the feathers on it, or if it's unfinished, or uncooked yet, unprepared, unclean, it may still not be a royal iskabed. In other words, so even though, yes, it's true that something may lose its status as a davar shebeminyan, as a davar chashuv, but it can become something else. Yeah, but it may not be something else because of some other problem with it. Or we're dealing, and as far as a davar shebeminyan, even though you may say a balchai is always a davar shebeminyan, it also can make a difference if it's a big balchai over a small balchai. Sometimes, if we talk about smaller Balei Chaim, they may not have as much chashiv as the larger Balei Chaim. So it all depends on what we're dealing with. Even though something started off being a davar chashuv, as we saw by Birya and by Roilus Kavit, there can be something that will undo it in a later stage. That will, of course, allow it to become bottle as just as any other ordinary thing. Just that here by davar shebeminyan, we didn't talk about that. All it's telling us, it's introducing us to this concept that even though many things are bottle b'roiv, remember there are certain things that have a chashivas that are not going to be bottle b'roiv, yovesh b'yovesh, which we just saw before. Animals, even though are yovesh b'yovesh, but well, they're chashuv in itself, so they have a different halacha. Nonetheless, the good news is that the chashivas of these things that makes them not bottle is midrabanan, as far as we need to know, which of course makes a big difference over here. So if there's ever a suffix that is an acceptable form of suffix, then of course it will be a suffix derabanan l'kula. Siman Kuf Yud is a fascinating siman. It's a little bit of a longer siman, and it talks a lot about different kinds of sfeikas. It requires a little bit more iyun, and hopefully we'll be spending a little bit more time on this siman, because to properly understand the various concepts, it's not a good idea to rush through it. But the interesting thing here is that the mechaber begins with this halacha, and it seems to be that he is following the shita of the Chachamim in the Rambam. But if you look closely to the rest of what he says, it appears like there's really not a big machlokes at all. Because if you say that anything at a certain time and place may also be considered just like those items listed in the Mishnah, then we're basically all in agreement that, at least according to Rabbi Elyahu Kin, that if it's always sold as it's always a davar shebeminyan at all times for all people at a certain place at a certain time, then it would have the exact same halacha as the rest of the items in there. Okay, we'll stop here.